A few months ago, I spent my summer ranking and organizing openings from every anime I had ever seen to create a definitive list of the best 150 openings. I was proud of that video, but due to it being a compilation of anime openings, YouTube insta-blocked it and I didn't have the desire to go in and re-edit the whole thing. But I enjoyed this summer project so much that I decided, as a project for next year, I was going to rank every single anime I have ever watched. By the time this video releases, it will be 2024, and that just so happens to mark the 10-year anniversary of when I started watching anime. In these 10 years, I have found some of the best pieces of media ever released, and some of the worst as well. So, why not celebrate with a list? I'm Deadsea, and in this 20-part video series, yes, 20 parts, I will be breaking down the 200 anime I have watched in the past 10 years, and ranking them by my own personal preference. The shows will be rated in the categories of visuals, sound, vibes, enjoyment, memorability, and premise, basically how original or unique does the show's concept feel. The latter two categories will be rated out of 5, while the first 4 will be rated out of 10 for a total of 50 possible points. I feel I must stress again that this list is entirely made of my own opinions, so you are more than welcome to disagree with some of my takes and tell me what you think of these rankings in the comments below. Also, general spoiler warning for some details of shows. I'll try not to spoil too much about them, and if I spoil anything major, I'll put a show-specific warning when we get to it, but you have been warned. Lastly, I made sure that I felt qualified to talk about all these shows by holding myself to a standard that I had to watch a certain amount of the anime before ranking it. For instance, if a show was only 12 episodes, I had to watch the whole thing. But if it was over 200 episodes, I had to watch at least 100 of those for it to qualify. So for example, I haven't seen all of Gintama, I'm still watching through it, but it does qualify to be ranked since I have seen over 100 episodes of that show. I think that's pretty fair, and let you guys know I'm not just ranking these based off like the 3 episode rule or anything. Also, as a side note, I'm not counting things like anime movies, music videos, hentai, or western cartoons stylized with anime flair, as comparing all of those things together feels unfair to one or multiple of them. Anyway, enough prefacing, you came here to see a list. So without further ado, here are my top 200 anime, starting from the worst of the worst. This show is, undeniably, one of the worst things I have ever watched. If you are someone who likes unadulterated fan service, I'm still not sure I would recommend it even to someone of your esteemed palate. Seriously, don't watch this, and if you do, don't tell anyone you watched this steaming trash fire. Keep it a secret, a deep, dark, abysmal recollection that you let haunt you only in the worst of sleep-deprived stupors. Hell, if you can, don't even let yourself remember this show exists. It gets merit for not looking awful animation-wise, being unique in its repetition, by highlighting the same audacious concept over and over, and I must begrudgingly say, having a few cute moments. But at the end of the day, you're still watching multiple teachers fall for their students, and no one has any problem with this. And they all know each other, and they all even attend the same school. An investigation needs to be run on every faculty member in the prefecture immediately, if this is what students come to expect at this institution. And it's insane that the show presents its concept as wholly wholesome and proper, to the point of never really alluding directly to the fact that it's fucking illegal, not to mention gross. They may briefly have a thought along the lines of, I shouldn't be doing this with my teacher, but then 5 minutes later, they're still doing it with their teacher. The ending, spoilers, I guess, involves one of the kids fully getting it on with their teacher, and the other characters, even the other teachers, are like, OMG, congratulations, we're so happy for you. What? Even I can only suspend my disbelief so much before my brain short circuits. Maybe if it were a straight up hentai, it would get a pass for, being a fetish. But the show can't even get that right and cops out before showing you the full nasty business. Truly, no other show I have seen was as joyless, emotionless, or invoked the sense of dread from just watching the plot transpire as this one. Why the Hell Are You Here, Teacher sits firmly at the bottom of the list, and with any luck, it'll stay that way for all my days of watching anime. Ah, my original black-haired edgelord show. Though, I guess in Black Bullet's defense, I don't remember enough about it to say for certain whether it actually was edgy, or if it just kinda oozes that aura of edge. Something about the washed out color palette, and even just the concept of lollies that fight, demons? Aliens? Something or other for the sake of humanity, just makes me roll my eyes. I watched this show somewhere around 8 years ago, and it really stands out as the type of show that teenage me would be into, but one that 20-something me just, well, as I said, rolls his eyes at. It's the perfect amalgamation of teen angst, no different from the core feelings and aesthetics of many modern-day isekai power fantasies. The idea is a fresh enough take on a dystopian drama, and I will give the protagonist credit for not giving into the incessant lusty lolly, because sure, we needed one of those in a dystopian action drama. Why not? But that particular bar is on the floor when this medium is home to some of the most inventive and engaging stories of our modern era. This show simply feels confused, from a frankly terrible OST of different themes and musical genres, to a tone that ranges from comedy to drama to angst and back again within a single scene. And it ends on a cliffhanger after 12 episodes, so there's not even a conclusion to look forward to. Black Bullet is just a mess through and through. It's still significantly better than that other show we just talked about, but God, can we please get to a show that doesn't have age gap relationships as a weirdly central focus? Alright, I don't know if this is any better, honestly. I actually originally thought this was going to be the very bottom entry for this list, because I have long considered Ergo Proxy my least favorite anime. But doing this project led me to realize that one's least favorite show and the worst thing one has seen are two very distinct things. Ergo Proxy may not be the worst thing my eyes have ever laid upon, but why is it my least favorite anime? It's because here we have a show that asks and then proceeds to answer the question, can something be too philosophical? In short, this show's head is shoved so far up its own ass that all its semblances of inquisitive postulating on morality and human nature come across as pompous, and worse than that, dull. The bleak color palette and overall muted soundtrack don't do much to maintain engagement, and in only 23 episodes, there still somehow manages to be a couple episodes that feel like filler content, which only serves to exacerbate the feeling that I have spent too much time in this dour atmosphere with little to no payoff. Obviously, many people like this show for valid reasons, and it sets out with a strong opening, but to me, it meanders so long in posing answers to any of its questions that I was left in agony just trying to get through it. Maybe I would get more out of it on a rewatch, but there would have to be a very good reason for me to do that before I waste my time re-experiencing such a tedious, bloated show. Anime fans always complain that all rom-coms are set in high school and we never get to see, college or university level relationships develop. But you know why we don't get rom-coms set in university? Because when we do, we get Rent-a-Girlfriend. Or Golden Time, but that's not nearly as egregious as the former. We'll get to that later. Rent-a-Girlfriend is just pure garbage, through and through. And this is coming from someone who will openly state that this is a guilty pleasure series of mine. Yeah, sadly, I get sick kicks out of watching this socially inept bozo try to be a decent person for one goddamn second. Kazuya is the most compelling character in this show for me. just from the fact that you could not dream up a less likable protagonist who is also always the last person to come to the realization of how any person should deal with any sort of situation. Hell, like, 2 of the 3 openings literally have him running in circles. So from that angle, if watching other people be utter failures gives you joy, kinda in a Konosuba-esque way, the show works. As a regular piece of animation, though, why would you ever subject yourself to this? Don't think that there's some elusive golden story or character development, or that the visuals and fan service will make up for it, because they won't. The visuals can't even be noted half the time because the show has a really obnoxious habit of blocking half the screen with extra text explaining the characters' moment to moment behaviors and thoughts, because the show expects its audience to be so dense that they couldn't understand subtext if they were slapped in the face with it. The epitome of telling and not showing. Why would you ever waste time on a show that doesn't even think you, the viewer, are intelligent enough to perceive its contrived, bland, and overcooked concepts? It's a question I've asked myself many times. Therefore, though it is the perfect hate watch, that's not a good enough status to boost it out of the bottom 10. Still, at least it's not high schoolers doing all this, right? I will preface this by saying that I have no experience with the source material, and that the anime has been my only foray into the franchise of Corpse Party. I'm pretty sure people enjoy the games to at least some degree from what I've seen online, but I think the acclaim, or lack thereof, of the anime adaptation is pretty widely noted as exceptionally low. And yeah, we haven't reached any of the super hot takes on this list yet. I'm not gonna come out here and tell you Corpse Party Tortured Souls is good, actually. It's not. A couple of things really suppress its ability to be so. From the lackluster B-grade animation done by Asried, whose most notable other projects include Arifureta and Future Diary, so take that as you will, to the lack of really any memorable characters. I mean, granted, they are designed to be fodder for the gore fest that this anime is remembered for, but that makes it really hard to become attached to the story because you don't give a shit about any of the people driving it forward. And I don't even really remember the deaths all that well either, which, if I'm going to a party of corpses, I would probably want to leave that party remembering how the corpses got there. The only one I remotely remember was about a girl in a bathroom stall, and I kid you not, that is the only scene that has stuck with me from the 5 episodes of this series. But the main thing that Corpse Party has going against it is just the lack of imagination. When playing a game that looks like this, you're going in with a certain expectation of how high your fear and investment will probably rise. A game designer can make different aspects of horror stand out in ways that other genres like books and, sure enough, anime just can't. But when you adapt this same story to the TV screen, that expectation of horror and the way that you play with it changes dramatically. You can't just tell the same story in one medium and expect it to have the same impact in a totally new one without going in and tweaking a few aspects of storyboarding or characterization. I will be more invested in a character that I myself have to play as who is experiencing this horror rather than seeing some cardboard cutout go through the same motions with no influence from me at all. And therein lies the central flaw of Corpse Party Tortured Souls. There is nothing here for audiences to get invested in. I will say the show does an excellent job of highlighting terror and supernatural elements through its uses of discordant and tonally offset music, but other than that, I don't know these characters well enough to want to see them succeed. And you don't really watch movies like Saw or Final Destination to see someone struggle and then lose. Those series have fodder characters we don't have time to grow invested in either, but they make up for that by highlighting how viscerally grotesque and terrifying it would be to be in these victims' shoes. And I just don't feel that with Corpse Party. I just feel bored. And maybe a little queasy. Now, this may end up being the most unfair and shortest review on this list, not because I have a personal gripe against Hamatora, but because I could not tell you a single thing that happens in any of these 24 episodes. Seriously, put a gun to my head and ask me to explain the plot of Hamatora, and I'm a dead man. What's crazier, I literally looked it up, listened to the OST, and watched highlight scenes less than a week ago, and it's all already gone. This show is just that forgettable. I watched it originally because the opening for the second season was kind of a banger, but man, that opening is the only thing that stuck with me. I vaguely remember the characters having somewhat unique powers, and I don't think anything was stunningly bad about the series, but I'm not sorry. If I can't remember shit about your entire franchise, it probably isn't worth remembering. To be fair to Hamatora, at the time I watched it, it was preceded by shows like Mob Psycho 100, Cowboy Bebop, and My Hero Academia, back when that show was at least a little interesting, and the show I watched immediately after it was goddamn JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. My mind probably had to push some stuff out to make room for the insanity that was happening in my other viewing experiences at the time. I could go back and rewatch it to see if there is some stuff of value out there, but that would require sinking in another 8 hours to a show I ranked as a 3 out of 10 on my anime list back when I first watched it. Yeah, I'll just stick with my gut on this one. Next. It's just the ending, dudes. I swear, I was wholly into this show as a teenager because I thought it was nice seeing these siblings reforge a shattered family dynamic, albeit through really cringy means. I mean, this just simply isn't how families act with one another, at all. You find your sister playing eroge, you don't join her in playing the eroge. Ew. But you know what? I could put that aside because there were some wholesome moments, and the characters had admittedly fleshed out qualities, at least more than I was expecting. On top of that, you have a surprisingly realistically depicted relationship between the main guy and not his sister. Plus, I'll just say it, as an otaku still in his moderately closeted otaku phase, it was nice to see a series that seemed to understand the appeal of its own material and wasn't just, whoa, us anime fans are so weird, look. I hesitate to say it treated the topic with respect, given what we ended up with, but at least when I watched it, I was compelled by those traits. The other aspects of the show were frankly pretty mediocre, nothing outstanding in the realms of animation or Sakuga or the OST or any of that. The show beyond its best moments was just alright. Harmless, a little weird, but a fun time. And then... Look, it's one thing to ruin your series with a terrible ending. It's one thing to rewrite characters at the last second to have them think that the worst decisions they could possibly make are viable life goals. It's something else entirely to undo your entire, God, I'm realizing it probably isn't the entire, audience's investment in your characters and storyline by having the endgame be he gets with his sister. Anime has gone here before. Hentai and porn in general play into taboos, and people like them because we know that 90% of these taboos can only be experienced through media, and that's an exciting revelation, especially for a growing teenager. However, Oremo was not a hentai, nor did it suggest for maybe 85% of its runtime that it would ever get to that level of taboo. And then, when it starts leaning that way, you feel nauseous seeing the show devolve into the worst version of itself. Sure, you could argue the title gives it away, but if you watch the dang show, you know that MC's sister agreeing to marry him is so out of left field and out of character. This isn't a tsundere, it's not like I got stuck in the washing machine because I like you or anything, but baka moment. This is character assassination on full view. And let's not even get into the side characters, all of whom but one think that the brother is being so sweet and romantic about this. Listen, This show has merit. The ending is paramount, but it doesn't erase the good aspects on display. And yet, I cannot, in any good conscience, rewatch the show or recommend it to anyone because this show is the physical representation of eating an entire carton of Ben and Jerry's and getting to the bottom only to realize the chocolate chunks you've been eating along the way were actually all cockroaches. Maybe those cockroaches tasted good when you didn't know they were cockroaches, but now that you know, you can't buy Ben and Jerry's anymore. I'm starting to sense a theme here. The difference is one, the incest in here is more akin to porn, aka they're not actually related, and two, the incest in here is more akin to porn, aka I actually don't hate watching it. But just having a step incest is step wincest plotline that isn't as scarring as Oremo does not a good show make. For one, this show's presentation is just bland, bland, bland from beginning to end. The only scenes that have a little bit of attention and gravitas given to them from an animation or sound design perspective is the scenes where the MC, with his sisters. And when I say the sound design gives attention to those scenes, I mean it's almost entirely absent. They play into those scenes in particular like actual pornography, having zero backing music and leaving the majority of the sounds just being panting or insert stereotypical anime girl erotic noises here, which, sure, may give those scenes more heft and tells you exactly what this show really values, but makes it all the more obvious when the rest of the music in the show is just the most on par, middling, average, other synonyms soundtrack you can fathom. The appeals of this show over something like Oremo is that this series establishes itself as a dumpster fire from the outset. As soon as you see the plot synopsis, you know exactly what to expect. No rug pulls in the ninth inning that redefine and undermine anything redeeming about the show. Mostly because there isn't much that's worth redeeming to begin with. If I am being totally honest, the main reason this show has even stayed with me in any capacity is Giguk's ongoing pursuit to let people know that it's peak trash, and the fact that this opening has no right to be as good as it is for such a mundane series. Holy shit. And yes, calling a show about reverse double Salchow pseudo-incest mundane is ridiculous, but man, that's why it's here toward the bottom. Luckily, I think we're done with shows with overt incest tropes in them now. God willing. As much as Crunchyroll advertising will suggest to you that this show may be something worth caring about, I promise you it's not. What it is a whopping amount of unmet possibilities. The show's premise is what drew me in, an already established couple where the girl is the one who is great at absolutely everything and the main character boy is almost her token partner. Mayhaps an uninspired role reversal, but still something you don't see a lot in anime. I was hoping for a refreshing spin on the standard tropes of high school rom-coms, and that maybe it would be more than the standard gender swap the title suggests. But nope, this show is boring because it is literally just that. The main character is a hopeless putz, and his girlfriend, who, by the way, is still treated almost like a secondary character from the audience's perspective, so it doesn't even live up to that basic premise, is just good at most things. This is the entire show from start to finish. Now, the opening animation would have you believe that there is more to it, that there's an emotional through line, and that the reason for these two polar opposites being together is a compelling secret to the audience. But no, they just had one meet cute and then a couple more instances of him being nice to her when she was sad, and that's about it. Sorry to spoil, I guess, but I just saved you 4 hours of wasted potential. Because there is a lot you could do to make a show about an overpowered girlfriend very fun and engaging for the audience. But what the result ends up being here is that I don't even have that much more to say because the show is just so openly unremarkable. I watched parts of this with my fiance and appreciated it for the cute moments between the main couple. It was warm and made me remember a lot of our times together. But I watched the second half or so by myself, and man, without that personal emotional connection, I felt nothing watching these two lovebirds be in love, because the plot says they're in love for reasons. So, alas, here's our first case of missed opportunities severely hampering a show's value in my eyes, and sadly, it won't be the last time, I promise. I hate watching this show so much. Oh my god, it's so boring and badly paced, and the worst thing of all is that it has so much potential, and I know that there's a reason people like it so much, and why it's a defining piece of media from its genre. But Higurashi sucks, dude. I cannot get over how boring this series is from start to finish. How there can be 4 episodes of build up of characters being mysterious and saying the same morbid thing over and over again, and then we just do that 18 more times. And in between, it's scattered with humor and slice of life content. Like, I understand the point of juxtaposing the calmness of everyday life with the terror of an unknown threat, and knowing that one way or another, everyone is gonna bite the dust. But Higurashi feels like two shows shoved into one, and they were made by the same guy, and they're closely related, but they're both barely average, and then you shove them together, and it's terrible. The second season literally begins with an entire episode of people expositing about what the heck you just watched in season 1, but it's still trying to set up new mysteries and threads to follow. And then the first sequence of episodes after that is Rika saying, "I'm gonna die, yo," and everyone just kind of ignoring it before she dies, yo. And then it falls into the category of bad horror, where characters only eat it because they miss something obvious or make a stupid mistake. I did not enjoy watching any of Higurashi past maybe the first couple of loops of everyone dying, and that was mainly because the carnage is tense and chaotic to witness, but man, I really don't get how this is a pillar of horror anime. It's just such a slog for anything to happen, and when it does, it just resets and makes you sit through people figuring out the same stuff all over again. People seem to like it. I'm not dogging on that because, like I said, I see it. I see the potential, but it's just not for me. And if I'm being honest, I'm not totally sure who it's for. A fire soundtrack, though. Go listen to that if you want moody, creepy, or somberly beautiful vibes because that's fire. See, I can still be nice, even about shows I hate, usually. Higurashi rounds out the bottom 10. We still have a bit of a ways to go before we start striking diamonds, but hey, who doesn't love wading through the mud every once in a while, too?